I'm hearing from a lot of people how the world has gone mad. Now, in the last 12 months, it's been COVID stirring these polarised arguments, from masks to vaccines to the sense of our human rights being taken away. Before that, it was Trump, and here in the UK, it was Brexit. Whatever that external stimulus is, it breaks my heart to see so much internal stress and personal disempowerment come through the expression of those who long to see change. Now, it doesn't have to be that way, and we can make a difference and truly find our power. So in today's episode, I'm going to offer you my perspective on where your power truly lies and how you can have an impact on the changes you want to see in the world. So let's get into it. Hit it, Kim.
Welcome to the Be a Brilliant Human podcast. You're in the right place if you're a growth-seeking being who acknowledges the challenges and delights of your humanity on the path to an ever more conscious life. If you want to feel inspired to love and accept yourself, to feel free to be and express you in all your brilliance, if you want to truly value yourself and others and feel energized and alive both at home and in the world, then sit back and take a breath as you explore and grow the brilliance of your beautiful human self with your host, the father of non-personal awareness and creator of the MPA process, Joel Young.
Hello, and welcome to the Be a Brilliant Human show with me, Joel Young. I'm so glad you're here. We are at episode number 77, which means if you'd like to see the show notes, you can go to www.beabrillianthuman.com/77. And if you know the number of a previous episode, you have 76 before this to go and listen to, then you can find the show notes with the same thing, www.beabrillianthuman.com/ then the number of the episode will get you there. Wow, we are nearly at the end of March as I record this. It's unfathomable how time marches on. I think I say that a lot, but that's just my experience of time. And if you're here for the first time, I'm so delighted that you are here. Great that you have found this show. I hope you enjoyed today, and I hope you enjoy it enough to hit that subscribe button wherever you are. And if you're back for more, you know I love you. I love that you put me in your ears in some form for about half an hour every week. It's such a privilege to be in that position, really. And if you haven't hit the subscribe button already, then go ahead and do that. There's lots of wonderful things. A, it means you get notified when the episodes come out. B, it tells the systems, the podcast platforms, that the more people that like me, the more people they tell about it. It's this algorithmic world we live in. And that'd be really fantastic. If there's a place where there's reviews, then again, I'd love to receive any reviews from you. 5 stars, my favourite. But honest review of any sort is always good. So there we go. So today, what are we talking about today? Well, before we get into today's topic, just to remind you, especially always for those that are new, first time hearing me, I'm known mostly as the creator of MPA and the MPA process. MPA stands for non-personal awareness. It's a simple way, most people know the MPA process, which is a 6-line spoken word process, which helps you stop taking things so personally and so much more. And really, non-personal awareness is about stepping into a place of empowerment, a place where you can become resistance-free and non-stick, I like to say. So rather than being the old frying pan where you put an egg in it and it sticks to it, and life being like that, where the stuff of life sticks to you and weighs you down, it'll help you come into a space where, like a nice new Teflon pan, where you can cook the perfect egg, have the wonderful experience of a perfectly cooked egg, this being the metaphor for life, and it'll just roll off, and the stuff of life will just slide off you and keep you clean, pristine, and at your best. Being, in fact, as the name of this show, a brilliant human. Now, you can get started with MPA by downloading the MPA process for free. You'll find that at the show notes. Every episode has a link so you can get hold of the MPA process for free, or you can go to our main website, which is joelyoungmpa.com, and you'll find a link for it there. And if you're interested in learning more about MPA, MPA is great in terms of your own personal development, But also, if you're any kind of coach or therapist or change worker of any kind, it's a great tool to add into your toolbox. Not only helping you directly in its own way, but also accelerating whatever current modalities you do. And you can find more training for that at thempaacademy.com. Where you can look at our basic training, which is our core training to help you kind of install it in your life, our advanced training, which will help you work with other people. And if you're really keen and want to become really one of the top therapists in the universe, he says boldly, then you can join us in the mastery training, which is our professional certified practitioner training, which will be coming an intake starting very, very soon. I'm very excited about that. All right. So today really came out of a conversation that I had with a group that I have a call with, which happened last night. It happens twice a month, but it happened last night. And quite a few of the shares were along this line. But basically, one in particular was sharing how she was fed up with the government. And she proceeded to talk about, the protests and human rights being taken away. And there were discussions about the craziness of the masks and different perspectives. Now, first up, I want to say that I'm not saying sort of landing on either side of the argument. But the point that I think is the most key thing here is that these polarized arguments can put us in a place where whatever side of that flavor you land on, we end up feeling disempowered rather than empowered. We end up with it affecting our state in a way which makes us actually more ineffectual and less effectual. So in the case last night, the expression was coming out in a way which, was filled with anger and frustration, despair even. And also sort of the energy was affecting the system of that person in a way which was lessening that energy, and they were definitely feeling a sense of sort of hopelessness and disempowerment, and yet still railing against the system. So I did do an episode before, and I should have looked up the number of this, on, how to deal with the polarization within ourselves. And I will link that in the show notes. But today I really want to talk about the empowerment piece, because as I said in the intro, we can be empowered. There is a way to find our empowerment. It might not be exactly what you expect or think I might say, but I'm offering my perspective because I've seen it in my one-to-one practice, in my own life, and with the people that I've talked to and shared this information with. It makes a huge difference, firstly and foremostly, to one's own life experience in the face of kind of a seemingly dominating force or a system that's bigger than ourselves, but also in my mind is the route to being part of making the difference that you want to see. It's a way to contribute to the solution rather than find ourselves in this disempowered state. All right, so today I'm going to talk a little bit about what I see is going on, and what creates this sense of disempowerment, and then speak to what is my view of a slightly different way of looking at it, which will key you into that empowered state that you want. All right, let's do this. Okay, so I'm going to start by saying something which might sound a little bit weird, and that's the thing isn't necessarily the thing. What do I mean by that? What the hell are you talking about, Joel? Well, let's talk about protest, because that was one of the things that was talked about in this conversation in the group last night. There can be the action of protesting, which can be an expression of true empowerment, or could be an expression of disempowerment. So in its essence, that's kind of the crux of what I want to talk to you about today. There's a level of discernment about where you're coming from, such that protest coming from a truly like a congruent, authentic, empowered place is going to have more genuine impact than one which is coming from a disempowered place, which is probably going to do the exact opposite of what the conscious intent is. And this is really what I see the most in this kind of situation, is that the person expressing it who is in this space is seeking a sense of feeling empowered, seeking the change that they want, and and kind of wondering what to do about the situation that they see going on, that they see is crazy or needs to change or doesn't work for them. But what I see most is that they are coming from a place where the thing that whatever thing they do is coming from a place of powerlessness. Now, it can be tricky internally because we can trick ourselves into thinking that it's empowered because it feels like we're doing something. But to me, doing that something from a place of empowerment, again, can often be more damaging than helpful. So it's kind of almost worse than doing nothing in a way. And no, I'm not talking about being completely passive and rolling over in a situation you're passionate about. I'm really not saying that. I'm saying that the whole thing today is about being mindful of where you're coming from inside. So often I'll see these expressions of anger. I'm fed up with the government, but what's being said behind the words is, I have no power. We have no power. They are bigger than us. This situation is unsolvable. I'm just angry about it. And so those expressions are just like sort of grabbing at wind there, and they take a lot of energy. I mean, it can really affect our own personal sense of well-being when we get into this fight based on an internal sense of powerlessness. And, you know, in a way that is sort of aligning with the dynamic that is there, which is that they are the power, I am powerless. So in a way, you're adding to the dynamic. So sometimes it's good in polarized situations to think not just in terms of this or that, the polarization, but what is the relationship, what is the system, and which side of those scales, or which aspect of it, or how can I impact the system? Because when you're coming from that place of powerlessness, you're literally just confirming what already exists, and in many ways you become a victim of the thing that you're railing against. In fact, that's probably the biggest thing is I see is people expressing themselves, or they're part of the system, or they're part of the piece they see going on in terms of being a victim. Again, all of these are like you're coming from a place of really being in a state of disempowerment, and you can't make a difference from that space. That's always going to add to the status quo of what things are. And that can look different in different situations. I mean, one of the ways I see that is a sort of the conversation that, well, the conversation just confirms that, you know, oh, we can't make a difference, or I'm frustrated that we can't make a difference, or whatever we do, it doesn't make a difference. Those are all kind of confirming the status quo. Or it goes into a place of wanting others to change. You know, they should change, the government should change, somebody should do something, you know. People should wear masks. People shouldn't wear masks. You know, whatever the side of it is, vaccines are good, vaccines are bad. But from a place of, you know, we can't change it on some subtle level. So it becomes like a futile cry of unfairness and wrongness. But fundamentally, that the sponsoring energy, which is a term I like to use for that, the energy that sponsors the expression, either confirms the situation as it is, or is basically a state of disempowerment. Now, this can have an impact. Never mind the impact on the bigger global changes or even local changes that you want to see. One of the ways that it works is it affects you on a very personal level. So if you are expressing this stuff, you know, railing at the system and yet feeling powerless, that's going to affect your personal state. So it's going to take a lot of energy. You know, it's going to waste a lot of energy so that you're going to feel drained. And if you're filling yourself with these feelings of powerlessness, whether it's sort of because anger can often be, it seems like anger is a powerful thing, and it can be, but often it is an expression of an underlying sense of powerlessness. And the state that you're in affects the thoughts, feelings, and behaviors that come. So when you're trying to think about, you know, what can I do to make a difference? If you're coming from this angry or victim or powerless state, then the thoughts that you're going to attract are going to be ones which mirror that. They're not going to feel good. They're going to produce chemicals in your body that don't feel good and are not good for your general health and well-being. And out of those thoughts and feelings, that's where our behaviors are generated. So the kind of behaviors you do are going to come, again, to reflect that, all of which adds up to a manifestation which goes against the thing that you say you want. And that in turn, the thing I've seen, especially in these very polarized situations, it can affect relationships within families, getting into these polarized arguments and, just backward and forwarding. I did an episode recently about, going around in circles and, getting into these, again, polarized either or kind of relational arguments. And again, that's another horrific loop where it affects your relationships. That in turn affects your well-being, probably helps you feel even more powerless, and again, defeating cycle. And then sort of on an external level, from this empowered state, it literally adds on an energetic level, adds to the situation. So what seems like a fight against something that you don't want to change, and in fact the whole against thing isn't a whole another argument, but going into that space really adds, and as I said before, confirms the energy of it and just supports the maintenance of the energetic manifestation of this, whatever is perceived to be unfairness or disempowered or wrongness that is perceived in the society or whatever the situation is. So the thing that's really important that I want you to understand is that it's to watch the energy that you're doing something with, to look at where it's really coming from. And that really is something that requires you, first of all, to embrace the idea. It sometimes needs humility, actually. Humility is really important because it can be quite humbling to accept that what you're doing, again, probably through conditioning, it's very societal to sort of, and very cultural, definitely in the UK. We're known by the Australians as the whinging Poms for a reason. So whinging here in the UK is part of the status quo. You make a fuss verbally and do nothing. That's generally sort of how our national identity or part of it is perceived. So, but it's very prevalent in our modern society to sort of have that as an acceptable way to get. It's like it releases the pressure, or seems to release the pressure, but doesn't actually make a genuine difference to our internal state, not truly, and doesn't make a difference to the actual issue that we see that we'd like, or the situation we want to see a difference to. So, and that's going to require some trust. So I want to talk a little bit more now about, what do we do? How do we look at that? And what are the sort of key pieces of that equation that will help us to get more clear on, what our energy is and how that can have a more positive impact. So to lay out where I'm coming from there, really what I'm saying is the energy in which you do something has more actual power than the expression itself. So I'm really encouraging you to think in terms of energy first. Another way to say energy, which those words might not work for you, is I use sponsoring energy. What is a sponsoring energy? But it's like, what is your state of being? Because out of the state of being comes, as I said, the thoughts, the feelings, and the actions, the behaviors. So in the same way that a disempowered state coming from a sponsoring energy which is disempowered leads to disempowered thoughts, feelings, and behaviors, an empowered state leads to empowered thoughts, feelings, and behaviors. So really what I'm asking you to do, or what I'm suggesting, certainly this is my perspective, I have to own it, it's my perspective, is that it's about checking what is the sponsoring energy. So putting the energy first means you're going to be asking yourself, rather than, what can I do to make a difference, or how can I, change things or whatever it is, the first question really is, how can I come into an empowered state? Because, as I said, if you are coming from a place of disempowerment, you're confirming the situation as it is. But if you are coming into a place where you can find congruently within your entire being, in full wholeness, the true standing in the energy of empowerment, I am empowered, then in a sense you've kind of already won as much as you can win. You've hacked the system, right? The systems that are invested in inequality and disempowerment as part of a power grab, they only work because people continue to sponsor that idea that they are disempowered. The minute you step into empowerment, it's like you connect to where your power actually is. You connect to the wonderful quantum mechanics of manifestation, the magic of the universe, your ability to where your actions do actually carry the force of an aligned universe. I sometimes use the analogy of when you have cogs in a system. Cogs in a system only work when they're connected. It's the same for us, when our thoughts, feelings, behaviors are connected to what we want, then the cogs work together. And the whole thing with cogs is you get leverage. You can do so much more with so little. A really good example of this, one of my favorites is Gandhi. One of his quotes that I love is, in a gentle way, you can shake the world, which is my interpretation of that is saying that, when you're truly aligned, it doesn't necessarily take sort of massive action or a lot of action. It's just that aligned action, that action which comes from, in this case, a state of true empowerment, can have massive ripples throughout the entire world. And you probably know, Gandhi used hunger strike. That was his truly aligned way, and he was uncompromising in it. He was fully congruently aligned with it. And it came not from I can't make a difference, I'll starve myself to death. It was like, no, this is me making a stand in a way that the universe is speaking to me. That is my true aligned empowered action from a place of empowerment, which then pretty much brought down the British Empire's control of the Indian subcontinent, which is friggin' amazing. That's power. That's the ideal, folk. You've got to be as powerful as Gandhi. But in each of us, in our own way, have the capacity to move into that space. And part of the trick here in doing this is to really let go of the ideas of what that looks like. When you start putting energy first, when you start thinking, how can I help myself get into a state of empowerment? How can I start coming from a place of empowerment? The things that come to you, the thoughts, the feelings, and the behaviors may not look directly like the things that your agendaed mind thinks you're supposed to do to make a difference in the world. But it starts there. The energy first thing is action before beingness is the cart before the horse. You want the horse in front, you'll get a lot further that way. The horse may be able to move the cart a bit, but it's a lot better pulling the horse pulling the cart than the horse pushing the cart. Generally, that works a hell of a lot better. So again, it's like, so part of doing that is you're going to need to sort of trust the holistic system. So what do I mean by that? It's like, doing your bit, which is congruent and powerful and empowered from your space, it's going to have an impact as part of the whole system. Now, there are times where one person is singled out as sort of the person that makes all the difference. But that's not really how it works. Like Gandhi's an example of that. And his approach was a non-violent protest in the form of a hunger strike. So it could seem like a fairly passive thing. And again, this isn't about passive or active. So then you've got someone like Martin Luther King, who again was perceived as very an active vocal force. He was standing in his congruent empowerment, making the famous speech and all the stuff that came with that. So really the encouragement here is to find what's your piece of the puzzle. And it isn't always, Gandhi didn't get to the hunger strike without lots of steps before it. Martin Luther King didn't get to his speech before many, many steps and navigating through his own journey before that. But it starts with where you are. So it may be that what it takes to come into an empowered action is, rather than obsessing about the situation, it's just do the washing up and get the decks cleared. Now, that sounds crazy, but it's like, but if you start doing that from an empowered state in relation to whatever the situation you perceive as wants to change, then you're starting to activate the empowered mindset. And then other thoughts and feelings and behaviors may come to you which are more directly or are more, according to the mind, directly related. But if you're really open to what that is, again, it might not be what you think it ought to be. Because when it comes back to trusting the holistic system, when each of us sort of are really mindful of what our piece of the empowered puzzle are, then we start to get into an acknowledgement, again, requires some humility, that we all have differences in how we can best contribute to the outcome that we want to see. So in that way, you kind of, well, this reminds me actually of another quote actually from Mother Teresa, who kind of pointed to this. Let's see if I can remember it right. I think she was talking about numbers. She said, never worry about numbers, help one person at a time, and always start with the person nearest you. Now, that was, if I remember, relating to being asked about peace. What does peace look like? And for her, it was about helping one person at a time. She wasn't all about the helping, doing Live Aid, for example, which was what Bob Geldof did. It was his natural way was to be big and to do a big thing. Her way was to help people one at a time, come across them in the street, help them out, be kind to them, do a service. So again, getting away from this right way or wrong way. But where I do relate to that quote from Mother Teresa is when you're starting with yourself. It's like that bit, start with one person at a time and the person nearest you. Well, the person nearest you immediately is you. And the one thing at the time I get in terms of when you're talking about this context where you're looking to be empowered in relation to the changes you want to see in the world, then it's like, what's the next thing? And so rather than sort of building this matchstick tower based on disempowerment of good ideas and lots of actions, you're steadily building solid foundations based on one step at a time, putting energy first, putting empowerment first, and then seeing what builds. And then it becomes a magical mystery tour of wonderful empowerment. And who knows what that will become. But whatever it does become, at least you've got your own sense of well-being front and center, because when you're in that state, it's the best, man. It's the best feeling. It's kind of, in terms of what we all seek as a feeling, you're starting with the beginning, which is a sense of empowerment, knowing what to do. But also, again, as that translates out into manifestation, whatever it is, that there's this sense of connection and purpose and impact that comes from building things based on putting that energy first. Okay, so if I was to break this down into bite sizes, I kind of sum this up. I think the first thing is to be mindful of the sponsoring energy. What is the energy that you are coming from? What is your state of being first before you look to what expressions come out of you? So, and again, the question is, are you coming from a space of victimness, of being a victim, or are you coming from a space of really embracing the innate empowerment that you have in your being and coming from that place? And part two really is to really let go of the sort of any cognitive agenda that you've got, so that you can begin to trust the steps that come to you from empowerment, knowing that then you're going to build something which has an impact. Or if that's not your way, because it doesn't have to, it could be more passive or seem more proactive. It's like really getting out of the way and trusting, what is your piece? What's your flavor? And to give you sort of a deeper sense of that, because there's such strong agendas about what's the right way, what's the wrong way in our world. But thinking in terms of systems, I love to use the analogy of the body, because, there's many parts to the body. If you think purely in, never mind all of the energetic, psychosomatic stuff that goes on, but in purely physical terms, there are different perspectives that are happening and yet are completely in harmony. And in fact, the very differences is what makes the whole system work. So, for example, a heart cell. If you ask a heart cell what's most important, it will say you must beat. Beating is what everything is about. If you ask a skin cell, it'll just say, chill out, man. Chill out, soak in the rays. It's got a very different perspective. And when we get into those agendas, it's like the heart cells, start becoming these want to conquer the rest of the body to convert them to their belief and start telling the skin cells they've got to start beating. Then your body's going to have a problem. The system breaks down. But what actually happens in a good working system is the heart cells do what they do. They beat, and the skin cells do what they do. They chill out. They sort of just hang out and soak up the rays so we don't burn up in the sunshine and all that stuff. I'm not really expressing human biology very effectively. Any physicians out there or doctors, I apologize profusely. But you get the gist. It's a metaphor, folks. So yeah, letting go of the cognitive agenda means, letting yourself trust your piece of the puzzle. What's your piece, and move from there. In this way, what you do is you come into a space where you're truly empowered. And you know what? If we all did this, even just a tipping point number of us, which I think is 1.2 billion in the world, 1.2 billion people getting on board with an idea, tips the whole consciousness, so I heard, then you become part of the solution, and not just part of the solution, but you become another piece of the whole system, which is working in favor of harmony and peace and love and all those things that we all want to see on the world, and may have different perspectives about what that actually looks like. All right then. Okay, so before I wrap up, there's one thing I want to say. So the context of today's topic has been really in terms of like geopolitical stuff and COVID and all that kind of stuff. But these same principles apply in other situations. Wherever you've got a situation where you feel like there's some kind of dominating or controlling force, that could be like a relationship, for example, these same principles apply. If you're in a relationship with a dominating or controlling person, whether that's a boss or a spouse or another family member, just check what energy you're in terms of wanting to change the situation or the experience you find yourself in. Are you coming from a disempowered place and actually just confirming and reinforcing the dynamics as they are? And what would it look like if you come into a state of empowerment and asked without an agenda, what are the next steps? What's the thoughts, the feelings and the behaviors that would come from that truly empowered state? Again, then you're going to see miracles happen. The outcome might not look exactly how your mind has told you it's supposed to look, but when you drop the agenda, and by the way, if you really get the whole dropping the agenda thing, you are miles ahead of anybody else, which is why I can say, because it's such a core part of MPA, if you come and do the advanced training, it really teaches you this in the context of the MPA process. But I will often say the secondary gain of doing the advanced training, whether it's really about helping other people with the MPA process, but even if you do it for your own personal development, it could change your life, because it really drills home and gives you ways to learn how to drop your agenda around things. Then you're in the magic zone, super magic zone. That's why you're super resistance free. That's why I say people who do MPA really in this way without an agenda have no sense of any resistant clients. The resistance just doesn't factor into things, which means their experience of working with people, it takes a lot less energy, and their clients or the people they work with also have the benefit of that, and their own process work has no resistance in it. It just kind of flows and navigates around the boulders, which is also why I say it's great if you're just interested in personal development. Then that's one of the impacts it can have on your own internal work, your personal development work, is when you start to learn this and really get into it. it can take so much effort with resistance to do internal work. Some people I know go, I do so much work, I'm knackered. But think about the magic of doing it without resistance. Then it becomes a joyful ride, and maybe down the rapids, but when you've got the perfect way to get around all the boulders, it becomes a thrill. Anyway, I digress. So main point here is, not only is it in terms of the big geopolitical stuff that's going on, or the bigger worldwide changes, but those little challenges or those big challenges in your world where there's any sense of power dynamic, and you're really seeking to make a difference, have an impact, or just feel more empowered, like you want to know what to do. Relationships are a good example of that. These same principles will apply. So I thought I'd offer that to finish. All right, I think we're there. Fantastic. So thanks so much for being here. I hope you've enjoyed this episode. Do let me know. I'm always open to feedback. Thanks for those of you who've been writing in about the latest episode, saying that you really found them helpful. It seems this topic of dealing with relation, because this is kind of a relational issue, is touching nerves and helping people. So do let me know your experience of this and your thoughts. Always open to the discussion. As ever, you can leave me a voice message via the website. You just need to hit the purple button, I think it's purple, that says leave a message, and leave a message for me. Or all the usual channels. You can email me, joel@nonpersonalawareness.com. You can get in touch via social media, which for the most part is @JoelYoungMPA on places like Twitter or Instagram. MPA Rocks is the page to look for on Facebook. And on YouTube, if you're a YouTuber, then there'll be comments under the video. Or if you want to go find me on YouTube, you can just go to youtube.com/JoelYoung and leave a comment there. I look forward to hearing from you. Fantastic. Have a beautiful week. It's my birthday on Monday next week, so it'll be my birthday before you hear from me next. Another year older. And so, that's me. All that remains, as I always say, is to cue the moo.